All right, you guys. Welcome back, and today we're going to be talking primarily about a Highside gun pass um to attack ground targets. This um attack maneuver is dealt with a plane from that has a higher altitude, and what you're doing is entering a powered dive into your target, firing, and then climbing away. And what the Highside gun pass allows is an increased speed at time of attack, so that after the attack you can get away safely. This is the main maneuver that so-called boom and zoom planes are using. It's the primary maneuver that a boom and zoom. So now that we have talked about cornering speed in our first video, and you're able to take off and land from both the carrier and the airfield, I hope, and you have also studied your maps that are currently in the rotation, so you know where the ground targets are and you know where they're moving and what direction they're moving. This is when you can start applying your ground attack roll to really help your front lines push. Um, so in this video, we're going to explain the Highside gun pass, and we're going to touch into um, pursuit, um, lead, lag, and pure pursuit. They're pursuit tactics that deal with the reticle. Um, and what that does is allows your Highside gun pass to always give you a proper amount of time to fire, whether it's on a ground target or a plane. The pursuit tactics work for both. So, whoops. With this, we'll go ahead and get in the air. I'm going to be shooting my own targets just to show you guys. I am in the Gladiator. Nuts! And again, this is real. I have it on realistic settings, but I'm using full real controls just so you guys can see the blue little icon over the targets. So on this test flight, there are no moving targets, but I'll kind of demonstrate on it, like those. Are those Humvees? They're Humvees. So the first thing you need with a Highside gun pass is altitude. Really the lower the tier, the earlier the plane, the less altitude you're going to need to attack ground targets. But you always want to remember that there's other planes in the air, so if you want to try to do a Highside gun pass on them, you're going to have to get above them. So altitude is really key with the Highside gun pass. So now that we've made it to our ground target, that is somewhere below me, right back there. The Highside gun pass is usually, the dive is entered on the rear quarter, whether it be left or right quarter of the aircraft / ground target, especially both moving ground targets and moving aircraft. You want to enter on the rear quarter, otherwise your rate of closure is much too fast and your angle of attack is unpredictable if you're coming from the front quarter of either. So what we do is identify our target, and we've got like a little armored car / just vehicle, I don't know what it is, and it's facing to the east right now. So what we're going to do is we have our altitude, and we're going to prepare to do the Highside gun pass. I'm on the rear quarter, so I'll turn in, start my dive. I'll start aiming down sights. I'll start with, this is lag pursuit where your sight's behind it, and then we'll go into pure, and that's when you fire. And then you pull lead, climb away. And so I gained a lot of speed in that dive. And what that allows me to do is, if I were to miss, or if that were anti-air artillery, I could climb away and maneuver. I have speed to maneuver away. What it also allows is for me to get back to altitude, and I'm safe from anybody that was below me or is diving in on me to try to attack. The speed gain makes it so I have speed to burn if somebody sees me doing the attack and wants to hit me right then. So some things to consider when performing a Highside Gunpass on ground targets is obstacles. Like, say for example, that big building there's 2 ground targets next to it. The one closer to me, the way I would not perform the Highside Gunpass would be I would not come in from the northeast, which would be, I'll do a dummy run on it to identify what it is, and show you the run I would not take. I would not take this angle. The reason for that is because there's a building behind it. So when I go to do my pass, I'm concentrated on the target, and then all of a sudden, there's a big building right there that I could run into. So when you're inspecting your ground targets, when you're looking for what you're going to shoot at, try to find a good angle. A lot of times things are hidden in trees, underneath trees, so you have to kind of really find the right angle, the safest angle to attack. And the safest angle that I see for that target would be almost parallel with that little offset of the road that he's sitting on. And then I would come back out into this field along that tree line in my climb away. So I'll get ready to do another Highside Gunpass on it. So I'm entering my dive. I'm gonna pull lag pursuit, pure pursuit and fire, and climb away out into the field. There's nothing obstructing my exit path, and then I'm able to climb back up. And notice when I'm climbing back up, I'm watching behind me, and like you don't necessarily want to watch down and behind, you more so want to watch like up and behind, like about that angle, to see if anybody from your high rear quarter is coming in for an attack, because that is a primary time when you're going to get attacked, because you're hitting ground targets, letting them know where you are, and if you're running tracer rounds, you give away your position completely. So that's one thing to consider. And so now to move on to moving targets. These targets aren't moving, but we're going to pretend that they are. So if those targets are driving down that road, and I say they're going, we'll just use pretty easy numbers. Say they're going 50 kilometers an hour, and I'm flying in the air by the time I get to open fire, I'm going to be going 100 kilometers an hour. That's a slow number, but if I attack from their front quarter, which would be from right here, my rate of closure is actually 150 kilometers an hour. So the time I get to shoot is a third less than if I were to attack from the rear quarter. Because attacking from the rear quarter, I'm going 100 kilometers an hour, they're going 50 kilometers an hour. There's only a rate of closure of 50 kilometers an hour. So I've taken the speed and cut it, so the closure rate is a lot slower. I mean, given those numbers are really close to start, the closure rate is much slower. It gives you a lot more time to shoot. And you also have the ability to climb away. And again, if I attacked perpendicular to their path, the closure is going to be my airspeed. So if I'm going 150 or 100 kilometers an hour, my closure is going to be 100 kilometers an hour. But that's really the basics of the Highside gun pass and doing it safely. You don't want to enter a Highside gun pass is not. I mean, you don't really want to enter the dive in the vertical because you'll have to pull way too many G's to exit the dive. Going into the vertical is really you'll crash more than anything. You just want a fairly not too shallow, but a fairly shallow dive. And so I'm in a biplane right now, and the speeds are fairly slow in the, I mean, compared to other planes you'll fly in the game, they're fairly slow in the dive. And in the first video, I talked about cornering speed. And so this is the speed that your wing load allows you to turn sustained and immediate. So one thing that increases cornering speed is G-forces. So when you enter a dive, you don't have any G's on you at the moment, but the speed you're gaining is going to allow increased G's on your zoom or on your attack and climb back up. So one thing, the shallower the dive, the less G's you're gonna pull, and you'll have to just test out your plane in test flight to see the right angle to really attack with certain planes. Some you can attack fairly steep, others you can't because the wing load doesn't allow it. And if you pull too hard, if I were to pull too hard right here, my plane spins out because I lost a wing due to it stalling because I overloaded it with G-forces. So that's one thing to think about, is the shallower the dive, the less G's you're going to pull on your way back up. And I pulled really hard for an example there, but and really just a nice smooth swoop, climbing back up, checking your 6. And what this is going to do is you're most likely going to be playing the game by yourself. So what this will put somebody on your 6 if you do it, if you're constantly attacking the same ground target. So that's the other thing to know, is hit one target, check your 6, fly away, you hit one target. There's an hour to play the game. Go do something else for a little while. Watch to see if anybody's coming for a while. Just keep flying straight. You don't want to be turning back into the targets again, because what that does is if they're, trying to close, if the enemy is trying to close on you, turning back into where they're coming from or where they were headed originally is going to just increase their closure rate. So if you can see them, you'll obviously want to turn into them, but if you don't see them and you don't know they're coming, you do not want to turn back into your targets for a little while anyways. You want to make sure it's clear before you go back. So zoom climb away, watching your 6. And so if somebody does get on your 6, this is where we'll start talking about what to do. And that's kind of the next step. And especially in early tiers, it's a lot more forgiving and easier, just because there's not as heavy of armament in early tiers. I mean, yes, there are some nations with early cannons, but normally you're dealing with machine guns and planes that are fairly maneuverable, and it instantly allows you to have a dogfight on your hands when somebody comes and finds you, because you are the man and you're not afraid to show your position on the map. You're not hiding on the map, on the ground, like a coward. You're showing them that you're showing your presence, you're playing the objective, And then once you get good enough, you'll start beating the guys that get behind you, and then that's really satisfying. So that is the basics of the Highside Gunpass on ground targets. It gets more involved when you're dealing with attacking bombers and attacking enemy aircraft for boom and zoom tactics, and we'll get into that in a later video. But that's the basics for hitting ground targets: moving, stationary. It is, don't do what I do and turn right back into the target. It's a bad idea. I get shot down a lot for it because I'm impatient. You just gotta build that patience. Climb away, watch your six. It's fairly simple, fairly easy to maneuver, and it can be applied to enemy aircraft that are underneath you. So if you're just flying to the AO and you're looking for your ground targets, all of a sudden somebody just flies along below you, you can go, I can do a Highside Gunpass on him. So you just roll into him, take your time, do it gradual, dive, cut into the flight path, aim ahead, aim ahead, aim ahead. And then you're increasing closure, and then you shoot him down. So that's the Highside Gunpass. Put it to use. Start hitting ground targets. If you're new to Sim, it'll teach you the maps. That's the biggest thing gonna need to learn. And don't overextend in the AO. Just push your ground and then retreat back to your safe airspace and observe for a while. And then push and observe, push and observe. And that'll increase your chances of survival and grant you a good Lions gain per game, give you average steady income and steady kills once you start outflying others in the game. So we will see you in the next video, and I have no idea what it's going to be about, but we'll see you then. Alright, thanks guys.